How have you seen the startup ecosystem evolve over last 4 or 5 years? What are your major observations, positives or negatives? You can pick up both.
I think in terms of the positives is the fact that people are talking about it a lot more, right? And like any markets, right, you only get exponential returns or exponential benefits or exponential growth in any market once there is depth. Same with like equity markets. You can't really have a multi-billion-dollar stock unless it's actually liquid, it's actually being traded, it's actually got depth in the markets, right? The same way, I think the startup was almost a niche segment for us 5 to 10 years ago. Very few people were doing it. Very few people were becoming entrepreneurs. It was still, oh, he's an entrepreneur. It's almost an unstable thing, almost considered
Yeah.
a bad thing, right? 5, 10 years ago. Or didn't find a good job, so ended up doing
Yeah.
something on
Yeah.
their own. Almost that taboo was there, right? Same way, the investors in there was this closed knit ecosystem. Founders who have exited, who've got a lot of money, or billionaires who understand this and have built large firms, they've got their money, or VCs, which were mostly global VCs coming into India and had a lot of dollar capital, which they were investing, knowing that India is a growth trajectory. It wasn't widespread. Today, with the advent of social media, a lot of more talk about ecosystem, and I think thankfully to some of these things becoming a household name.
Yeah.
Once these startups that were startups 10 years ago now are public names, large listed equities, the trust is there.
Yeah.
When I tell my parents who'd never seen, what startups are, but then I tell them Paytm was a startup, Zomato was a startup, like all these listed companies that are large players now were startups essentially, but now they're large public companies trading with your SBIs and IndusInd on banks of the world, right? They see, oh, this makes sense. This is a large company employing thousands of people.
Yeah.
And this is how every large company today started as a startup at some point, right? And so that understanding was missing from the ecosystem. So I think the biggest positive is the wide reach that the startup ecosystem has got. And the fact that you're almost people, young folks are almost aspiring to be founders. I think yesterday, if the coolest thing was to be a consultant at BCG or McKinsey or a banker at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, today I think the coolest thing is to be a founder. Everybody wants to be a founder, own their own company, whether it is to build something big or to get into the glamour of fundraising or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
For mostly positive reasons, there is just more influx, right? And that same way, I think the risk capital has gone up in India. I think a lot more people who've got significant wealth but not uber rich are still okay to, tap into angel investing, private investing, and so on, and are able to sort of risk that capital. And the more founders that go into IPOs and then create their generational wealth and then put it back into the ecosystem, it's a cycle, right? So I think that cycle has been really positive. And I think given all of the things that have happened, how much employment some of these companies have generated, I think it's slow, but I think the government support is also coming in. It's getting better. And hopefully the more noise is created, the more social media advent is there and people are, able to raise a complaint, directly tag, the prime minister
Yeah.
if they
Yeah.
want to, right? It just makes it more accountability will come in, right? Like there is no way more accountability doesn't come in. Like even for roads, right? Nitin Gadkari is tagged on everything, and now he's like, I'm just going to put a barcode. You scan. This is the contractor. This is the person. This is the person you hold responsible. That just is a sign of transparency, right? And so transparency in the system is always good for the system because it just clears out everything and it makes it more efficient. So I think those are the good factors. I think the negatives have been the fact that we don't realize, but we are still very, very, very early in the India's startup ecosystem journey. And so people want overnight heroes and overnight wins, which doesn't happen. This is, we are at a place where US was 40 years ago and China was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so to get to the depth of the Silicon Valleys that we expect Bangalore to be, it's not, right? People think that, oh, Bangalore is India's Silicon Valley. And this, it's just cool to say, but the reality is very, very, very different. In the
Right.
US, you've got an idea and you get a $10 million check just to go fund that idea.
Yeah.
In India, to get a $10 million check, you probably have to have 100 crores of revenue first. Profitability, you've got to have. So I always tell this to people that in India, people raise pre-seed funds and call them pre-seed funds, but they want pre-seed valuations essentially, but they want the validation and the metrics of a Series A company. So I've seen funds that say we are a pre-seed fund. Now, a pre-seed fund essentially should fund an idea if they have to, right?
Yeah.
Or they should fund something which barely has like a very small sort of target market or a very small revenue base, but there is potential. But I see pre-seed funds going, oh, you're too early for us. There is nothing that's too early for a pre-seed fund. So the moment a pre-seed fund utters the words, you are too early for us, it makes no sense
Makes
because
no
pre-seed
sense.
is the earliest stage
Yeah.
of investing. If this is too early, then who do you go to, right?
Right.
And so I think Indian markets are still a bit risk averse to the kind of capital and the kind of support that a very, very flourishing startup ecosystem needs. But I think we are taking baby steps towards that, right? And to the point that the founders that have actually built these businesses and gone through that grind, now that they have billions of dollars to invest on their own, and family offices, as is the craze on LinkedIn these days, family
Yeah.
offices that are now got generational wealth, now want to invest in the next companies of the world.
Right.
As this money comes in, as this support comes in, I think we'll see an accelerated trend. And also, I think some of the geopolitical factors have worked out in India's favor, right? The more you hear restrictions on US visas, the more you hear questions on how Indians are treated in Australia and this and that, right? The more today's generations are happy to stay back.
Yeah.
And so, like they say that, oh, we're going to benefit if H1B visas. We're not really going to benefit from the folks that, 40-year-olds that had H1B visas coming back and building. No. But the 20-year-olds who are aspiring to be those 40-year-olds will probably not take that path anymore.
Right.
The guys that were like, yeah, Infosys job I'll take and I'll get this onshore location and spend 10 years in the US and make money. That aspiration is going away. Now, that same kid is probably thinking, I'm just going to build in India, be a founder, try and be the next Swiggy or try and be the next Eternal or whatever it may
Right.
be. So I think that aspirational change over 10 years will play out very well for India. And the kids that were thinking of entrepreneurship as not even an idea are probably the ones that are thinking of entrepreneurship as the idea to go to, right? You're not really thinking of a 50 lakh campus placement anymore. You are thinking of just starting up on your own. So I think that part is almost like it's a negative that we don't have that depth of markets yet. But I think for the next 10 years, I think that's the biggest positive as well.
Yeah.